Hey, oh, clear my throat. Hey everyone. Okay, and hello on a Tuesday, about 4 o'clock in Sydney. And what I wanted to just go through today is just talk a little bit more about fasting, whether it's intermittent fasting, extended fasting, alternate day fasting, and just what it actually means when I say that I use fasting almost like a secret weapon, not only to losing weight, but also to help maintain weight loss and generally for the whole physical well-being, and primarily managing and controlling diabetes and things. So what I wanted to do, now that I've found this great way of actually sharing my screen, is just to share a couple of tabs that I've got open on my monitor about this doctor who a lot of you may have actually heard of him. Some of you probably haven't, it's fine. But I'll just go ahead and share this. All right, so you're just going to hear my voice. So this is, accidentally muted that, sorry, Dr. Jason Fung, right? So he's a Canadian nephrologist. I have to look up what that actually means. But he is a world-leading expert on intermittent fasting and low carb, especially for treating people with type 2 diabetes. Now, he has written 4 books now. This one is a bit out of date. The 3 that they mention here of his health books is The Obesity Code, The Complete Guide to Fasting, The Diabetes Code, and his most recent one, which I think might have been released at the end of last year or early this year, was The Cancer Code. So it's interesting because they have these big links to diet and what we're actually, taking into our bodies, and just the inflammation and what it leads to when there is excess of it. So the Obesity Code. Now, I have seen YouTube videos and I've heard podcasts about these 3 books, but today I actually noticed on the Audible Australian site that I could get this free, the audiobook version. So I'm actually starting to listen to it now. So it's about 10 hours, just over 10 hours. But I'm starting to listen to that book. It's narrated by another person, but it is written by Jason Fung. So quite excited to actually sort of like listen a bit more in detail about what he actually goes into. But prior to that, I don't know for all you golf people out there, but someone in the fasting Facebook group that I belong to actually posted a link to this guy. Now, in my golfing days, I'm familiar with Phil Mickelson because Phil was around sort of in those days when it was Tiger Woods, glory days and things. And those two used to sort of battle it out. He won recently the one of the majors, quite recent because this is May 24th. But he's got a thing here about the fact that he actually uses the fasting method to get him into shape and also just for his general well-being. And I'll just scroll down to this particular paragraph that he said, where he said, I wasn't educated. I mean, these guys, right? You'd think that, money doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually educated, okay? But he starts off with saying, I wasn't educated. I either wasn't aware or I didn't want to know the things I was putting in my body, whether it was diet soda and how toxic that is, or whether it was the amount of sugar and how much inflammation it causes, or whether it was the quantity. All of those things I just kind of shut my eyes to. Now, how many of us can actually relate to that? Because it's so easy for us to eat when we're, in our teens, 20s, 30s, when the metabolism feels, okay, your body seems to be like just responding quite well. And it's not like you see a chocolate bar and immediately you've got new deposits of fat on you, right? But as you get older, through your 40s, and this is what I've found because I am in my mid 50s, that in your 40s you do get your metabolism starts to slow down, and you start to ache a bit more. The exercises you do don't seem to have the effect on the fact that you are gaining weight still, even though you try to do your portion control and you try to do your calorie in and calorie out, and just watch your overall kind of eating the older you get. But your body still is basically sort of slowing down and things. So yeah, so that's why they sort of say that. And this article here, where people tend to sort of see diabetes, as relation to being overweight and obese being a big contributory factor, and they call it like a progressive kind of disease, because you get this when you're actually when you get older. But that doesn't really explain the fact that diabetes is creeping into more of our younger generation these days. So if it's not a progressive disease, then what exactly is the main contributing factor to diabetes? Thing. Now, the good news, and this is thefastingmethod.com, and this particular blog is written by Jason Fung, because there is reference here to, he's written an entire book about obesity, excuse me, fasting, and about type 2 diabetes. Now, once again, it's a bit out of date, but the information is still very valid, I consider. So I will just quickly go through like the main parts of what I wanted to point across. I will put a link under this live to this blog article, so you can actually read it and share it if you find it useful, and you might want to sort of share it with other people who might find it useful as well. So is there any wonder that all of us have this problem with actually trying to understand how we can actually manage or reverse diabetes, when you've got the big associations, and he mentions here the American Diabetes Association, that proudly proclaims that on their website that type 2 diabetes is a chronic and progressive disease. And it does feel like, for a lot of us, that it is a life sentence. But it's actually a great big lie. Okay? Type 2 diabetes, and in my case, pre-diabetes, which is obviously before this, type 2, is almost always reversible. And it's very easy to prove, which is a great news for more than 50% of American adults. And I'm not quite sure on the statistics in our own sort of country, but I did see one in 2019. I think it was like I don't know whether it was the World Health had these stats out, but it was like 1 in 13 of Samoans had diabetes, and they were aged between that 29, I think, and 70 age group. And so that's 1 in 13, and it was a very similar number in New Zealand, and I think in Australia as well, I think. So it's not just within our Pacific Island community, we know that, but it is way too high, and we can do something about this. So they've got in here, suppose your friend is diagnosed as diabetic and then works really hard to lose 50 pounds. So he takes himself off all his medications and his blood sugars are now normal. But what would you say to him? Probably something like, great job, you're really taking care of yourself, keep it up. What you wouldn't say is something like, you're such a dirty, filthy liar. But my doctor says this is a chronic and progressive disease, so you must be lying to me. It seems perfectly obvious that diabetes reversed because your friend lost all that weight. And that's the point, that the disease is irreversible. And it does start with actually making the plan and the decision and the commitment to lose weight first. It's not a magic pill and it's not a magic diet. It's a decision to actually do this. But he also goes on, diet and lifestyle changes will reverse it, not medications. The most important thing is to lose weight, but the diabetic medications don't do this. Quite the contrary. Insulin, for example, is notorious for causing weight gain, and patients intuitively sense that they are heading down the wrong path. I can't personally speak because I've never taken insulin. My Mal is on, actually he's not even on insulin. He's on, what's that one? I'll note it down, but he's actually on a few of the medications to just control his sugar level, which he's been able to sort of decrease the dosage of it. So I'll go on back to the article. They would often say to me, Doctor, you've always said that weight loss is the key to reversing diabetes, yet you prescribed me a drug that made me gain 25 pounds. How is that good? This is Jason, never had a good answer because none existed. It was not good. The key was weight loss, whereupon the diabetes often goes away or at least gets significantly better. So logically, insulin does not help reverse the disease, but actually worsens it. Now, please consult and get your advice from, do your research and advice from your own doctor about this as well. But I'm reading basically what Dr. Fung, and he is actually well renowned, and he has helped a lot of people in this exact manner of being able to reverse their diabetes. So I'm just basically quoting what he wrote about. Oh, metformin, that's what my what Mel is on. Other medications such as metformin or the DPP-4 drug class are weight neutral. So while this won't make things worse, they won't make things better either, since weight loss is the key to reversing type 2 diabetes. Medications won't make things better. So how can you reverse it? This is a quick guide. We're back to sugar. Sugar, that evil sugar, okay? The essential feature of type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes is that our bodies are completely filled with sugar. It's not just too much sugar in the blood that's only part of the problem. There's too much sugar in our entire body. So imagine our bodies to be a sugar bowl, a bowl of sugar. So when we are young, our sugar bowl is empty. Over decades, we eat too much of the wrong things: sugary cereals, desserts, and white bread. Oh, I remember eating a lot of white bread. I'd have toast and have, your Marmite or your Vegemite on it and things. But, it was there. And when you were younger, you had the metabolism and I was more athletic then. So I would actually work it off quite a bit. But there does reach a point of time when you age that it's difficult and it starts to stay there. So the sugar bowl gradually fills up with sugar until it's completely full. The next time you eat, sugar comes into the body, but the bowl is full, so it spills out into the blood. Insulin is a normal hormone produced when we eat, and its job is to allow glucose into the cells. When it is no longer able to do it, glucose glucose piles up outside the cell in the blood, and it is called insulin resistance. Okay, so it goes on to why that basically happens, and it uses like an analogy. It's like packing your clothes into a suitcase. At first, the clothes go without any trouble, but after a certain point, though, it is just impossible to jam in those last 2 t-shirts. You can't close it. The luggage is now resistant to the clothes. Okay, so what they're saying is the cell is filled to bursting with glucose. So you're trying to force more in, which is difficult and requires much higher doses of insulin. But when the insulin levels are unable to keep up with the increasing resistance, blood sugars rise and your doctor diagnoses you with type 2 diabetes and starts you on a pill such as metformin. But metformin does not get rid of the sugar. Instead, it simply takes the sugar from the blood and rams it back into the liver. The liver doesn't want it either, so it ships it out to all the other organs, the kidneys, the nerves, the eyes, the heart. Much of this extra sugar will also just get turned into fat. Okay, so he goes on about more about that sugar and how, yes, diabetes is getting worse over time. Now, this is the next bit's actually quite graphical because it has a picture about a diabetic ulcer in the foot, where it actually talks about like the end game, where basically your whole body is starting to rot from this excess of sugar in the blood that is toxic and things. So let me just scroll right past that, because unless you actually just want to like close your eyes for the next few seconds while I go past it. Yeah, but I thought this was actually interesting when because you think about Alzheimer's as well as being something that is, you hear a lot of is actually happening within your community and within the older people. And yeah, that is also like sort of an indirect consequence of diabetes. There's somehow this link as well, where it's basically saying here that your brain rots and you get Alzheimer's disease. Your liver rots and you get fatty liver disease. Your legs rot and you get diabetic foot ulcers. Your nerves rot and you get diabetic neuropathy. So no part of your body is spared. Okay, so let's get on to some good news, because that's really like morbid stuff, but that is what's happening. How to reverse diabetes. So once we understand type 2 diabetes, then the solution becomes pretty bloody obvious. If we have too much sugar in the body, then you get rid of it. Don't simply hide it away so we can't see it. There are really only 2 ways to get rid of the excessive sugar in the body. 1, don't put sugar in, and 2, burn it off. That's it. That's all we need to do. And it's natural, completely free, no drugs, no surgery, no cost. All right. So step 1, don't put sugar in. You can just eliminate all sugar and refined starches from your diet. So there's plenty of examples of that, such as flour, white rice, because they're quickly broken down by digestion into glucose. The other things are, okay, yep, look, protein shakes, protein bars, and protein powders should all be avoided, and instead focus on eating lots of vegetables and natural healthy fats. Thanks. So natural fats such as those found in avocado, nuts. Now the kind of nuts that I used to eat were, I started off with the almond, natural almond, and then I replaced those with pecans and natural macadamia, but I haven't actually eaten nuts for the last couple of months and things. So I'm sort of off the nuts. And olive oil are well known to have healthy effects on both heart disease and diabetes. I think I've heard about the Mediterranean diet. I'm not quite sure what that is though. So he seems to say it's sort of as well accepted to be a healthy diet. Eggs and butter, of course, are back. But most importantly, stick to eating whole, natural, unprocessed foods. Step 2, burn it off. And this is where we'll go back to fasting. Yes, you can exercise, but a lot of people, you know, when you get older, you don't really want to do that running and jumping. Like I said, I don't really like running and jumping that often. I will walk. I can walk, and I'm very good now in doing my Pilates and my yoga and the cardio downstairs at home on my yoga mat. But I've found what was really effective too was fasting. And fasting is the simplest and fastest method to force your body to burn sugar for energy. Because glucose in the blood is the most easily accessible source of energy for the body. Fasting is merely the flip side of eating. If you're not eating, you're fasting. When you eat, your body stores food energy. And when you fast, your body burns food energy. So if you simply lengthen out your periods of fasting, you can burn off the stored sugar and things. So now, I'm not telling you, and this is definitely not what I did, where I would actually starve myself. No. Fasting would be like, say you're eating like an hour earlier with dinner, so you're finishing an hour earlier, so you sleep a bit longer. The next morning, I don't think there's many of us that actually are very hungry when they wake up in the morning. I know that for some time that, you know, I would just eat breakfast because it was like a routine that we got into, where you eat breakfast and you eat morning tea and you eat lunch. Let me go off that so you can actually see me. Yeah, I'm back again. Where you would eat breakfast and then you'd eat morning tea and you'd eat lunch and you'd eat afternoon tea and then you'd eat your dinner and then you might have a late supper, you know. So there was just all this whole series of like snacking where your body's continually burning off only what it's just consumed, not what's actually been stored in your body. So if you're eating maybe an hour earlier with your dinner, perhaps actually easing into your fasting by not actually having breakfast, but eating a little bit later in the day, so that your eating window actually goes down like this thing, right? Now, whether you sort of think in your head, oh, but I exercise and I actually have to eat because I need the energy. I thought the same way. I did. But I've learned that when you actually, you know, start having a sort of a shorter eating window, and that's what they sort of call that time regulated fasting or intermittent fasting, is that your energy level is still fairly high, because your body basically is actually getting the energy from the stored fat. You know, it's not getting it from, it burns off first the one that you're just consuming, right? The one that you've just, the snack, that the dinner that you just ate. But then the longer that you're not actually eating, it's starting to burn it off the actual stored fat. When that's where you really see the benefits of losing weight. So the energy levels are still fairly high. So I can exercise no problem where I haven't actually eaten beforehand, and I'm not hungry afterwards either, where you finish your exercise. And my exercise sometimes will actually be It's a minimum 60 minutes, maybe 90 minutes at a time. And I'm not running to the fridge straight after to, to replenish at all. Now, you build up to that and you build that muscle in there. But just to say that it's this whole thing, it's a mental game that's going on in your head about what it's actually saying to you, and then what your body is actually really sort of feeling and doing. And it's probably actually saying, thank you for fasting and giving me time to actually absorb any excess sugar that's in my body, whether it's coming from added sugar or carbohydrates, because carbohydrates turn into that glucose. And that's why those two alone, actually, if you limit those ones, either eliminate them or reduce them down into like low carb, then you will actually see the benefit of that weight loss more drastically and things. All right, so that's what I wanted to touch upon about the fasting thing. Fasting is not starving. It's a great thing to actually be aware of, and also that I use it also to maintain where I'm at, because I've reached a certain level of weight and my metabolism responds to certain things, and my energy levels are at a certain level. So I always listen to my body and what it's actually saying to me. But I've learned to actually use fasting along with low carb, high fat way of eating, and being able to just maintain where I am and things. So that's actually really good. All right, so I just wanted to share that with you guys. But I will put a link to this article, and I'll put a link also to the fact that if you want to get that obesity code book for free, then this is the audible.com.au site. So it is in Australia. I'm not sure if it's actually New Zealand, if it's available in New Zealand, but if you can access the Australian site and, sign up, whatever, then use your one free credit to get that book, and then listen to it in the car when you're driving, or just, rather than some music maybe, and keep feeding that mind of yours and things with good information. All right, so that's what I wanted to speak today. Be on the lookout. I'm going to post into the group the silver side with sauteed stir-fried vegetables and homemade cheese sauce that I made for dinner last night. Tonight's dinner is actually going to be a roasted chicken. Now, I've always done it this way. You've probably seen that I actually salt quite a few things, pink Himalayan salt. But that's basically all I do with the chicken that I'm going to roast tonight. Is basically just, put salt all over it, and it crisps up the skin as well. Skin's good for you when you eat that. So I'll put that in there, and maybe I'll just bake some of the vegetables with that one too. So that will be tonight's dinner. So it's very simple, very simple, and it doesn't take too long. It doesn't take much effort. And I'm not like making separate meals for me and separate meals for my family. We're just eating all the same type of thing. And so I'll post the silver side one that I did last night. I posted an event that's going to happen on Thursday at 1 p.m. Sydney time. That's Australian Eastern Standard Time. But you can catch the replay, so if you can join live and ask your questions. I've got this great guy that I saw on a Tokelau health site, and he basically, like I said, he graduated from his medical school. He's in Australia. I'll get to know him a little bit more probably during the actual live. But I just find it fascinating because he's coming in from that clinical side of things in terms of like how how it actually affects us within, you know, uses the right medical terms and everything else, apart from the ones that I actually use. So it'll be nice for you guys to sort of join or catch it later, where we just have this chat about health and wellness and diabetes, and in particular about what we can actually do just individually, one of us at a time. Focus on putting the oxygen mask on our own faces first, to get ourselves actually in a right state and condition, so that we can actually help others and things. So that's at 1 o'clock on Thursday. So this is only Tuesday, so I will be back tomorrow with another live where I talk about another part of that power thing of mindset, health, mindset, nutrition, exercise, sleep. That fifth one always escapes me. Mindset, fasting, the one that I was just talking about today. Okay, all right, thank you, and have a nice evening, everyone.